The massive space station hung in the darkness like a jewel made of metal and light. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports, bringing representatives who had never met face-to-face before. This was the Galactic Nexus, and today it would host something that had never happened in living memory: a peace summit between humanity and the Krevthar Dominion. Commander Lisa Hayes stood at the viewport of her ship, the horizon, and watched the station grow larger. She had been a diplomat for 10 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Krevthar were legendary across this sector of space. They were hunters, conquerors, and they had never backed down from a fight. But humanity had proven surprisingly difficult to defeat, and after 3 years of bloody stalemate, both sides had agreed to talk. The docking process took 20 minutes. Lisa spent that time reviewing her notes and trying to calm the nervous flutter in her stomach. She wore her formal uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and her short brown hair was pulled back in a practical style. She looked professional and composed, even if she did not feel that way inside. When the airlock finally opened, she was greeted by a small delegation of station officials. They were Valorians, a species of tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and cautious eyes. The lead official bowed slightly and spoke in perfectly translated human language through a device on his collar. "Welcome, Commander Hayes. The council chamber is prepared. We must warn you that tensions are high today." Lisa nodded and followed them through the corridors. The Nexus was enormous, with passages that stretched in every direction. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved past them, some floating, some walking, some moving in ways Lisa could not quite understand. The air smelled strange, a mixture of chemicals and alien biology that made her nose itch. The council chamber was at the heart of the station. When the doors opened, Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. The room was circular and vast, with seats rising in tiers around a central floor. Hundreds of delegates filled those seats, representing species she had only read about in reports. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars beyond, and the lighting came from crystals embedded in the walls that pulsed with soft blue light. But what caught her attention immediately was the figure standing in the center of the chamber. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with scales that gleamed like polished obsidian. His eyes were yellow and slitted like a reptile, and when he moved, muscles rippled beneath his armored hide. This was War Chief Dracnus, supreme hunter of the Krevthar Dominion, and he was in the middle of a speech. Lisa found her assigned seat and sat down quietly, not wanting to interrupt. Around her, the other delegates sat in absolute silence. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. None looked comfortable. Dracnus spoke in a deep, rumbling voice that needed no translation device. He spoke human language perfectly, with only the slightest hiss on certain words. For 3,000 years, the Dominion has ruled this sector. We have hunted on 1,000 worlds. We have brought order through strength. Those who challenged us learned the price of defiance. As he spoke, holographic images appeared in the air above him. Lisa felt sick as she watched. Images of conquered worlds, cities burning, species driven to the edge of extinction. Dracnus displayed these horrors like trophies, his voice filled with pride. The Scarix thought their technology would save them. We hunted them to their last colony. The Braxians believed their numbers would overwhelm us. We taught them that quantity means nothing against quality. The Meridian Federation tried to unite against us. We shattered their alliance in a single campaign season. Lisa looked around the chamber. The delegates from those species that still existed sat with their heads down, not meeting anyone's gaze. The survivors of the conquered peoples had no choice but to sit and listen to their own defeats being celebrated. But then Lisa noticed something strange. In a seat not far from her own sat a woman who did not look away. She did not bow her head or show any sign of fear. She simply watched Dracnus with eyes that seemed older than the stars themselves. The woman was unlike anyone Lisa had ever seen. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent in the blue light. Her hair was long and silver, flowing down her back like liquid moonlight. She wore armor that seemed to be made from leaves and scales woven together, and it moved with her breathing as if it were alive. Her ears were pointed, coming to delicate tips that extended past her hair. An elf. Lisa had heard rumors that they existed somewhere in the galaxy, but she had never seen one before. Beside the woman sat something even more extraordinary. A dragon. It was smaller than the massive beasts from human legends, perhaps the size of a large dog, but there was no mistaking what it was. Scales of deep crimson covered its body, and small wisps of smoke curled from its nostrils. Its eyes were intelligent and watchful, tracking every movement in the chamber. Dracnus continued his speech, gesturing at a new set of images. And now humanity has arrived in our space. You fight well, humans. Better than most. You use tricks and strategies we have not seen before. You are clever prey, but you are still prey. Every species that has stood against the Dominion has fallen. Every single one. He paused, letting his words sink in. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. That was when Lisa stood up. The movement drew every eye in the room. The Valorian officials looked panicked. Dracnus turned his massive head to stare at her, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Commander Hayes," he said, and there was a warning in his tone. "The floor has not been yielded to you." Lisa felt her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady and clear. "I have a question, War Chief." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Dracnus tilted his head, studying her like a predator studies its prey. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Ask your question, human. Let the council hear what you wish to know." Lisa took a breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on what she said next. In all your hunts across the centuries, in all your conquests and campaigns, have you ever encountered prey that hunted you back? The question hung in the air like smoke. For 3 heartbeats, the chamber remained frozen in silence. Then something unexpected happened. The elf woman smiled. It was a small smile, sad and knowing, as if she had been waiting for someone to ask that question for a very long time. The dragon beside her lifted its head and its eyes began to glow with an inner fire. Dracnus laughed. It was a deep booming sound that echoed off the walls. "Prey that hunts back? That is a contradiction, Commander. Prey runs, prey hides, prey dies. That is the natural order. Predators hunt. That is what we are. That is what we have always been." "I see," Lisa said quietly. She remained standing, her eyes locked on Dracnus. "Then you have never truly been tested." The laughter died. Dracnus took a step toward her, and the movement was pure threat. Around the chamber, guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons. "Are you challenging the Dominion, human?" "No," Lisa said. "I am asking a question about the nature of hunting. You see, on Earth we have a saying. The most dangerous prey is the one that learns to think like a predator." Before Dracnus could respond, the elf woman stood. All eyes turned to her. She moved with fluid grace, walking down the steps toward the central floor. The dragon followed her, its claws clicking softly on the metal surface. "My name is Silvara," the woman said, and her voice was like music over water. "I am of the Etherwind, the people your Dominion claimed to have destroyed 200 years ago." Dracnus stared at her, and for the first time, Lisa saw something like uncertainty in his expression. "The Etherwind are extinct," he said. "Are we?" Silvara asked. She reached the central floor and stood beside Dracnus, though she barely came up to his chest. The dragon ember positioned itself protectively at her side. "You hunted us across the stars. You burned our worlds. You thought you had won. But tell me, War Chief, have your fleets been having trouble lately? Ships disappearing along the outer rim? Hunting parties that never return home?" The chamber erupted in whispers. Dracnus raised a hand for silence, but his eyes never left Silvara. "What do you know of this?" Silvara smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I know that Commander Hayes asked the right question. I know that something is hunting you now, War Chief. Something that learned from watching you hunt others. Something patient and old and very, very angry." She turned to address the entire chamber, her voice rising. "The commander asked if prey ever hunts back. The answer is yes, but not in the way you think. Not with simple revenge or violence. Prey that survives long enough learns to become something new, something neither prey nor predator, something that hunts those who thought themselves unkillable." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. This was not how she had expected the summit to begin. Around the chamber, delegates were standing now, shouting questions, demanding answers. The careful order of the council was breaking down. Dracnus raised both arms, and his voice thundered over the chaos. "Enough. This summit is not about ghost stories and ancient grudges. We are here to discuss terms of peace between the Dominion and humanity. Nothing more." But as he spoke, a Valorian official rushed to his side and whispered urgently in his ear. Lisa watched Dracnus's expression change, saw the confidence drain away. The council chamber emptied slowly after Dracnus dismissed the assembly. Delegates hurried away in small groups, whispering urgently among themselves. Lisa remained in her seat watching as the war chief spoke with his advisors. Their voices were too low to hear, but their body language told her everything. They were worried. She was about to leave when a soft voice spoke beside her. "You asked a dangerous question, Commander Hayes." Lisa turned to find Silvara standing next to her seat. Up close, the elf woman was even more striking. Her silver hair seemed to catch the light in impossible ways, and her eyes were the color of deep forest shadows. The dragon Ember sat at her feet, watching Lisa with intelligent crimson eyes. "Dangerous questions are the only ones worth asking," Lisa replied. She studied Silvara carefully. "You knew what my question would reveal. You were waiting for someone to ask it." Silvara smiled, a sad expression that made her look ancient despite her youthful appearance. "I have been waiting for 200 years. Come with me, Commander. We need to speak privately, away from listening ears and watching eyes." Lisa hesitated. She knew nothing about this woman except that her people had supposedly been wiped out by the Krevthar. That should have made Silvara an ally, but something in those ancient eyes made Lisa cautious. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I have information about what is hunting the Dominion fleets," Silvara said quietly. "And because that same thing will come for humanity next if we do not act quickly." That decided it. Lisa stood and followed Silvara out of the chamber. Ember padded along beside them, his claws making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. They moved through the corridors of the Nexus, taking turns that led them away from the main passages and into quieter sections of the station. Finally, Silvara stopped at a door marked with symbols Lisa did not recognize. The elf woman pressed her hand against a panel, and the door slid open to reveal a small private chamber. Inside, the walls were covered with star charts and data screens showing ship movements across the sector. "This is your room?" Lisa asked as they entered. "One of them," Silvara replied. "I maintain several safe locations throughout the galaxy. Old habits from when my people were being hunted." Lisa walked to one of the star charts. Red markers dotted various locations along what humans called the Outer Rim, the edge of explored space where pirate activity was common and official patrols were rare. "These are the locations where Krevthar ships disappeared?" "Yes, 37 vessels over the past 6 months. Battle cruisers, scout ships, and even a dreadnought, all gone without sending distress signals. All vanished as if they simply stopped existing." Lisa felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had heard rumors of missing ships, but the official reports from the Dominion claimed they were isolated incidents, accidents or desertions. The truth was far worse. "What is doing this?" she asked. Silvara walked to a cabinet and removed a small crystal that glowed with pale blue light. She held it carefully as if it were precious beyond measure. "Before my people fell, we kept records, histories that went back thousands of years. This crystal contains one such record, a warning passed down from the eldest among us." She placed the crystal on a reader device. Immediately, a holographic image appeared in the air above it. Lisa saw what looked like an ancient temple, carved from black stone and covered in symbols that hurt to look at too long. Long ago, before the Krevthar rose to power, there was another species that ruled this sector. They called themselves the Veil Wraiths. They were hunters just like the Krevthar, but far more dangerous. They did not hunt for food or territory. They hunted for the essence of their prey, feeding on the life force of other predator species. The holographic image shifted, showing creatures that seemed to be made of shadow and light at the same time. They moved in ways that defied physics, phasing through solid matter and appearing in multiple places at once. The Wraiths hunted the apex predators of every world they encountered. The stronger and more arrogant the prey, the more they were drawn to it. They fed on pride, on the certainty of dominance, and when they had consumed enough, they would go dormant, sleeping for millennia until something awakened them again. Lisa stared at the images, her mind struggling to accept what she was seeing. "You think these Wraiths are what is taking the Krevthar ships?" "I know they are," Silvara said firmly. "My people recognized the signs 2 centuries ago. That is why we practiced humility, why we lived in balance with nature, rather than trying to dominate it. We knew that if we became too proud, too aggressive, we would draw the attention of something worse than ourselves. But the Krevthar destroyed your worlds anyway," Lisa said quietly. Silvara nodded, and pain flickered across her face. "Yes, we tried to warn them. We told them that their arrogance would awaken an ancient evil. They laughed at us, called us weak and cowardly. Then they hunted us like animals. Ember made a low rumbling sound, and Silvara reached down to stroke the dragon's head. The gesture seemed to comfort both of them. But some of us survived, Silvara continued. We went into hiding, scattering across the galaxy. We maintained our old ways, staying hidden and quiet. We watched and waited, and then humanity arrived in this sector. Lisa felt something click into place in her mind. That is when the disappearances started, when we made first contact with the Krevthar. Exactly. The Wraiths sense predator activity. Your expansion into their space, combined with the Krevthar aggression toward you, created a resonance, a signal that told the Wraiths that worthy prey had arrived. They woke up and now they are hunting again. Lisa turned away from the hologram and looked directly at Silvara. Why are you telling me this? Why not warn the Krevthar directly? Because they will not listen. Draknus is too proud, too certain of his superiority. He would dismiss this as superstition or a trick. But humanity is different. You are new to this sector. You have not been shaped by centuries of dominance. You still ask questions instead of assuming you have all the answers. Lisa considered this. It made sense, but there was still something Silvara was not telling her. She could see it in the way the elf woman held herself, in the careful way she chose her words. What do you want from me? I want you to help me investigate the disappearances. If we can find evidence, real proof of what is happening, then maybe we can convince the Dominion to take action before it is too late. And if we cannot convince them, Silvara's expression became grim, then we prepare for war. A war against an enemy that has defeated every apex predator species it has ever encountered. A war that could end all intelligent life in this sector. Lisa looked at the holographic images of the Veil Wraiths, then at Silvara, and finally at Ember. The dragon met her gaze steadily, and Lisa had the strange impression that it understood every word being spoken. Where do we start? Silvara smiled, and this time there was hope in it. There is an abandoned station called Nova Point, located in the Outer Rim. 3 Krevthar hunting parties disappeared there within the same week. If there is evidence to be found, that is where we will find it. Nova Point is deep in contested space, Lisa said. If I take the horizon there without authorization, it could be seen as an act of war. Then we go quietly. My ship is small but fast. It can reach Nova Point in 2 days. The question is whether you are willing to risk the consequences. Lisa thought about her orders. She was supposed to be negotiating peace, not running off to investigate mysterious disappearances in dangerous territory. But she also thought about what Silvara had shown her. If the Veil Wraiths were real, if they were truly hunting the Krevthar, then the threat was too great to ignore. I need to inform my superiors, she said finally. I cannot just disappear without telling anyone where I am going. Of course. But be careful what you put in official reports. There are those who would use this information for their own purposes. Political games and power struggles mean nothing if we are all dead. Lisa nodded. She understood the warning. The Galactic Council was full of species that would gladly see the Krevthar weakened or destroyed. If word got out that something was hunting them, it could trigger conflicts that would make the current tensions look peaceful by comparison. Give me 2 hours, Lisa said. I will send a coded message to my admiral and arrange for my crew to stay here. Then we can leave. Thank you, Commander. You are taking a great risk by trusting me. I am taking a risk by not trusting you, Lisa corrected. If what you say is true, then doing nothing is the most dangerous choice of all. As Lisa turned to leave, Silvara spoke again. Commander Hayes, there is one more thing you should know. The Wraiths do not just kill their prey. They study it first. They learn its tactics, its weapons, its psychology. By the time they attack in force, they know everything about their target. Every weakness, every fear, every point of pride. You are saying they have been watching us. I am saying they have been watching everyone. The Krevthar, humanity, and every other species in this sector. They are preparing for something. A final hunt that will determine which species survives and which becomes nothing more than a memory. Lisa felt a chill run through her, despite the comfortable temperature of the room. How do you know so much about them? Silvara looked away, and for a moment she seemed older than the stars themselves. The journey to Nova Point took exactly 48 hours. Silvara's ship was unlike anything Lisa had seen before. From the outside it looked organic, with curves and flowing lines that reminded her of a seed pod. Inside, the walls pulsed with soft bioluminescent light, and the controls responded to touch in ways that felt almost alive. Lisa spent most of the journey studying the data Silvara had collected. Reports of missing ships, salvage logs from nearby systems, and fragments of garbled transmissions that had been dismissed as equipment failures. When put together, they painted a disturbing picture. The disappearances were not random. They followed a pattern moving slowly inward from the outer rim, toward more populated areas. Ember stayed close to Silvara throughout the trip, but Lisa noticed the dragon watching her with curious eyes. On the second day, while Silvara was piloting through a particularly dense asteroid field, Ember approached Lisa and rested his head on her knee. "He likes you," Silvara said without looking back from the controls. "That is rare. Ember usually trusts only me." Lisa carefully stroked the dragon's scaled head. The scales were warm to the touch and she could feel a faint vibration, like a purr but deeper. "How long have you two been together?" "Since he hatched from his egg, 173 years ago. We bonded immediately. In my culture, the bond between elf and dragon is sacred. We share thoughts, emotions, even life force to some extent. When one dies, the other usually follows soon after." Lisa looked at Ember with new understanding. This was not just a pet or a companion. This was Silvara's other half, her soul made manifest in physical form. "I am sorry for what happened to your people," Lisa said quietly. Silvara was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was tight with old pain. "The Krevthar came to Etherwyn with demands. They wanted us to submit to the Dominion, to become another conquered species in their empire. We refused. We showed them our histories, our warnings about the wraiths. We told them that their path would lead to ruin. They called us cowards and fools." The ship shuddered slightly as they passed through the asteroid field, but Silvara's hands were steady on the controls. "They gave us 1 week to reconsider. When we still refused, they began the bombardment. Our cities burned. Our forests turned to ash. We fought back as best we could, but we were not a warrior people. We were scholars, artists, caretakers of ancient knowledge. Within a month, Etherwyn was nothing but a dead world." "How did you escape?" "My mother was the keeper of the sacred archives. When she saw that defeat was inevitable, she ordered the surviving elves to scatter. We took what we could carry and fled into the stars. I was young then, only 50 years old. Ember had just learned to fly. We hid in asteroid fields and abandoned stations, always moving, never staying long enough to be found." Lisa thought about what that must have been like. 2 centuries of running, of watching over your shoulder, of knowing that your entire civilization had been reduced to scattered refugees. But you survived. You kept your knowledge alive. Yes. And now perhaps that knowledge can prevent the same fate from befalling others. The ship's instruments began beeping softly. Silvara leaned forward, studying the displays. "We are approaching Nova Point. Prepare yourself, Commander. What we find here may not be pleasant." The station came into view slowly, emerging from the darkness like a corpse floating in water. It had been a Krevthar military outpost once, a fortress designed to control traffic through this region of space. Now it drifted silently, its lights dark, its hull scarred with damage that Lisa could not immediately identify. "No life signs," Silvara reported. "No power readings except for emergency backup systems. The station is completely dead." They docked carefully at one of the airlocks. Lisa checked her equipment twice before they disembarked. She carried a standard-issue plasma pistol and a scanner designed to detect various forms of radiation and biological hazards. Silvara wore no visible weapons, but Lisa had learned that elven magic could be more dangerous than any gun. The airlock cycled slowly. When the inner door finally opened, they stepped into darkness broken only by the beams of their flashlights. The air was cold and stale, tasting of metal and something else Lisa could not identify. The first body they found was 10 meters down the corridor. It was a Krevthar warrior, still in full battle armor, but the armor had been torn open from the inside as if something had burst out through the chest plate. The warrior's face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. "Look at the walls," Silvara said quietly. Lisa turned her light toward the corridor walls. Deep gouges scored the metal, running in patterns that made no sense. They were too regular to be random damage, but too chaotic to be anything made by tools. What could do this? Something with claws. Or something that can phase through matter and then solidify inside solid objects. The wraiths can do both. They moved deeper into the station, finding more bodies. Some were torn apart, others looked untouched except for the expressions of terror on their faces. In one chamber, they found an entire squad of Krevthar hunters who had barricaded themselves inside. The barricade had done nothing. The bodies were arranged in a circle, weapons still in their hands, as if they had made a last stand against something that came from every direction at once. Ember growled low in his throat, and smoke began to curl from his nostrils. Silvara placed a calming hand on his head. Easy, little one. They are long gone now. Are you sure? Lisa asked, her hand on her pistol. I can sense life force. There is nothing living on this station except us. They found the central command center after an hour of searching. The doors had been sealed, but something had melted through them, leaving edges that were smooth as glass. Inside, the equipment was still functional, running on emergency power. Lisa went to the main console and began accessing the station's logs. Here, I have the security footage from the day the station went silent. She pulled up the video files and started playing them on the large display screen. At first, everything looked normal. Krevthar personnel moving through the corridors, conducting routine operations. Then at exactly 1400 hour station time, the lights began to flicker. The first sign of the attack came without warning. One moment the corridors were empty. The next, shadows began to move where there should be no shadows. They flowed along the walls like liquid darkness, independent of any light source. Then the shadows took form. Lisa felt her blood run cold as she watched creatures materialize out of nothing. They were vaguely humanoid but wrong in every way that mattered. Their limbs bent at impossible angles. Their heads were smooth and featureless except for openings that might have been mouths. They moved with terrifying speed and grace, phasing through walls and appearing behind the Krevthar warriors before they could react. The Krevthar fought back. Lisa saw them firing weapons, deploying tactical shields, even engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Nothing worked. The creatures absorbed energy weapons like sponges. Physical barriers meant nothing to beings that could phase through solid matter. And when the warriors tried to fight up close, the creatures simply reached into their bodies and pulled something out. Something that glowed with pale light before being absorbed into the creature's form. Their life essence. Silvara whispered. The wraiths are feeding. The video showed the systematic destruction of the entire station garrison. The wraiths moved with purpose, herding their prey, cutting off escape routes, studying their tactics. Lisa realized with horror that this was not just an attack. This was a hunt, and the hunters were toying with their prey. The final moments of the recording showed the station commander, a massive Krevthar veteran covered in battle scars. He had barricaded himself in the command center and was sending a transmission. Lisa activated the audio. This is Commander Vextar of Nova Point to all Dominion forces. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. They phase through our defenses. Our weapons are ineffective. They are not trying to destroy us quickly. They are playing with us, learning from us. Send reinforcements immediately. Send everything you have because these things, whatever they are, they hunt like we hunt. They enjoy it. And they are very, very good at it. The transmission cut off abruptly. On the screen, shadows poured through the sealed doors like water through a crack. Commander Vexistar raised his weapon, but before he could fire, a creature materialized directly in front of him. For a moment, they stood face to face. Then the creature reached out with one impossible limb and touched the commander's chest. Vextar dropped his weapon. His eyes went wide and his mouth opened in a silent scream. Light poured out of him, streaming into the creature. Within seconds, the mighty warrior collapsed, his body empty and hollow. The video ended. Lisa and Silvara stood in silence for a long moment. Amber pressed against Silvara's leg, whimpering softly. Finally, Lisa found her voice. We need to warn the Dominion. We need to warn everyone. Yes, Silvara agreed. But first we need to leave this place. The wraiths study their prey. They learn patterns. They will have left sensors here, watching for anyone who investigates. We may have already triggered an alarm. As if in response to her words, the lights in the command center flickered. Once, twice. Then they went out completely. In the darkness, Lisa heard a sound that made her skin crawl. It was like the galactic nexus was in chaos when they returned. Ships crowded the docking ports and armed guards patrolled every corridor. Lisa could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Something had happened while they were gone, something that had frightened the entire station. They were met at the airlock by a squad of Krevthar warriors, weapons drawn. The lead warrior, a scarred veteran with one eye missing, gestured for them to follow. War Chief Dracnus demands to see you immediately, both of you. They were escorted through the station under heavy guard. Other species watched them pass with frightened eyes. Whatever news had reached the Nexus, it had spread fear throughout the diplomatic community. The council chamber had been transformed into a military command center. Holographic displays showed star maps with dozens of red markers. Each marker represented a lost ship or station. There were far more than when Lisa had left just 3 days ago. Dracnus stood at the center of it all, surrounded by his commanders and advisors. When he saw Lisa and Silvara enter, his eyes narrowed with an emotion that might have been relief or anger or both. Commander Hayes, Lady Silvara, you disappeared without authorization and traveled into restricted space. Under normal circumstances, I would have you both arrested. But these are not normal circumstances. He gestured at the displays. In the 72 hours since you left, we have lost 16 more vessels, battle groups, supply convoys, even a mobile fortress that carried 5,000 warriors. All gone, no distress signals, no survivors, just silence. Lisa pulled out the data crystal from Nova Point. We have evidence. Security footage from one of the attacks. You need to see this. Dracnus took the crystal and inserted it into a reader. The chamber fell silent as the footage played on the main display. Lisa watched the faces of the Krevthar commanders as they witnessed their fellow warriors being systematically hunted and killed. She saw their expressions change from skepticism to horror, to something that looked like fear. When the footage ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Dracnus turned to face the assembly. What are these creatures? Silvara stepped forward. They are called the Veil Wraiths. They are older than any species in this chamber. They are predators that hunt other predators, feeding on life essence and growing stronger with each kill. My people encountered them millennia ago and barely survived. We kept records, warnings that we tried to share with you 2 centuries ago. Records that we dismissed as superstition. Dracnus said quietly. There was no pride in his voice now, only grim acceptance. We were fools. One of the Krevthar commanders, a female warrior with ritual scars across her face, spoke up. How do we fight them? Our weapons pass through them. Our armor is useless. Our tactics are known to them. What strategy can defeat an enemy that learns from everything we do? You cannot fight them alone, Silvara said. No single species can. The Wraiths have destroyed every apex predator civilization they have encountered, because those civilizations relied on strength and dominance. The Wraiths are stronger. The Wraiths are more dominant. You cannot beat them at their own game. Then what do we do? Another commander demanded. Surrender? Run? No, Lisa said, drawing all eyes to her. We do what humans have always done when faced with a superior enemy. We adapt, we cooperate, we use our weakness as our strength. Dracnus tilted his massive head. Explain. Lisa moved to the display controls and brought up a different image. It showed human military doctrine, specifically the sections on asymmetric warfare. On Earth, humans were not the strongest predators. We were prey animals for most of our evolution. We survived because we learned to work together, to use tools, to think creatively. When we finally became hunters ourselves, we brought those lessons with us. She changed the display to show historical battles where outnumbered human forces had defeated superior enemies through tactics and cooperation. The Wraiths expect you to fight like predators. They have studied predator behavior for millions of years. But what if we fight like prey that has learned to think like predators? What if we use strategies they have never encountered, because they only hunt apex species? One of the advisors, an older Krevthar with white scales, leaned forward. You are proposing we humble ourselves, that we admit weakness and seek help from lesser species. I am proposing you survive, Lisa said bluntly. Pride is what drew the Wraiths to you in the first place. Your arrogance rang out across space like a dinner bell. If you want to live, you need to let go of that pride and accept that cooperation is not weakness. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some commanders agreed with Lisa. Others called her words an insult to Krevthar honor. Dracnus raised his hand for silence, and slowly the noise died down. Lady Silvara, he said, you have fought these Wraiths before. What is your counsel? Silvara was quiet for a moment, her hand resting on Ember's head. The dragon watched the Krevthar with wary eyes. I counsel that you do something my people could not. We were too few and too scattered when the Wraiths came for us. We had no allies because the Dominion had destroyed any species that might have helped us. But you have a chance we never had. There are still free peoples in this galaxy, species that fear you but might be willing to set aside that fear to face a greater threat. She looked directly at Dracnus. The question is whether you are willing to ask for their help, whether you can stand before those you have conquered and admit that you need them. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of history. The Krevthar had never asked for help. They had never needed to. The idea of doing so now, of admitting that they could not handle this threat alone, went against everything their culture valued. Draknus stood motionless for so long that Lisa wondered if he would respond at all. Then slowly, the war chief removed his ceremonial helmet and set it on the table before him. It was a gesture of vulnerability, of setting aside rank and authority. "I am old," he said quietly. "I have led the Dominion for 40 years. I have conquered worlds and defeated enemies that outnumbered us 10 to 1. I have never known defeat. I have never known fear, but I know them both now." He looked around at his commanders. "I have watched the footage from Nova Point 5 times. Each time I see the same thing. I see our warriors fighting with courage and skill. I see them using every tactic we have developed over 3,000 years of warfare. And I see it mean nothing. The creatures in that footage are not just stronger than us. They are better hunters than we will ever be because they were designed by evolution to hunt species exactly like us." He turned to Lisa. "You are right, Commander Hayes. We cannot win this fight through strength alone. We need allies. We need new tactics. We need to become something we have never been before." "And what is that?" the scarred female commander asked. "Humble," Draknus said. The word seemed to pain him, but he did not look away. "We need to be humble enough to learn from those we have considered beneath us." Lisa felt a surge of hope. This was the opening she needed. "Then we start by reaching out to every species in the sector. We share what we know about the Wraiths. We ask for their help in developing countermeasures. And we make it clear that this is a threat to all of us, not just the Dominion. Many species will refuse," the older advisor said. "They will see this as an opportunity to weaken us further." "Some will," Silvara agreed. "But not all. There are still those who remember what it means to stand together against darkness. My people, what remains of us, will answer the call. We have been hiding for 200 years, but we are still here, and we still remember how to fight." She raised her voice so it carried through the entire chamber. "I will send word to the hidden enclaves. The elves will come out of the shadows. We will bring our dragons, our magic, and our ancient knowledge of the Wraiths. We will stand with you not because we have forgiven what you did to our world, but because we understand that revenge means nothing if we are all dead." Ember roared softly, and small flames flickered around his jaws. The sound carried a note of challenge and determination that transcended language. Draknus looked at Silvara for a long moment, and something passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of respect. "Your people will be welcomed," he said, "and protected. I cannot undo what was done to Etherwyn, but I can promise that no Krevthar will raise a weapon against an elf while this threat exists." "That is enough," Silvara said. "For now," Lisa stepped forward, "we need to move quickly. The Wraiths are accelerating their attacks. Based on the pattern, they will reach the core systems within weeks. We need to establish a defensive perimeter, share intelligence, and begin developing new weapons and tactics." "Agreed," Draknus said. He looked at his commanders. "Send word to all Dominion fleets. They are to cease all aggressive actions and fall back to defensive positions. Send envoys to every species in the sector, even those we are currently at war with. Tell them the truth about what we face." He turned back to Lisa. "Commander Hayes, I am granting you temporary authority to coordinate the defense efforts. You have proven yourself capable of thinking beyond traditional boundaries. We need that now more than ever." Lisa felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had come to the Nexus as a simple diplomatic officer. Now she was being... The Wraiths came exactly 14 days after the Alliance was formed. They emerged from hyperspace in a wave of darkness that blotted out the stars. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, surrounding the galactic Nexus like a living shadow. Lisa stood in the command center, watching the displays with a calm she did not feel. Around her, representatives from 17 different species coordinated the defense. Humans worked alongside Krevthar warriors. Valorian technicians shared data with elven mages. Species that had been enemies for generations now fought as one. Admiral Kate Morgan stood beside her, a veteran officer with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had arrived from human space 3 days ago with a fleet of ships and a head full of unconventional tactics. "They are not attacking yet," Kate observed. "They are studying us. Let them study, Lisa said. We have a few surprises prepared. Over the past 2 weeks, the combined forces had worked day and night to prepare defenses. Human engineers had adapted their weapons based on elven knowledge of wraith weaknesses. Krevthar warriors had learned new tactics that went against every instinct they possessed. And the elves had emerged from hiding in numbers that shocked everyone. 300 elven riders and their dragons now circled the nexus, their forms graceful against the void of space. Silvara led them, mounted on Ember, who had grown larger and more fearsome in recent days. The dragon's scales gleamed like rubies and fire danced around his jaws. Through the communication channel, Lisa heard Silvara's voice. They are preparing to strike. I can feel their hunger. They have been feeding on Krevthar essence for weeks, and now they want more. All forces, stand ready, Lisa ordered. Her voice was broadcast to every ship, every station, every warrior waiting for the battle to begin. Remember the plan. Do not engage individually. Stay in formation. Support each other. We are stronger together than we are apart. The first wave of wraiths struck without warning. They phased through the outer defense perimeter as if it did not exist, materializing inside the formation of ships. But this time the defenders were ready. Human vessels activated new shield harmonics designed to disrupt phase shifting. The wraiths found themselves forced into solid form, unable to pass through matter as easily as before. Krevthar gunners opened fire with weapons modified to emit frequencies that caused the wraiths pain. And elven mages cast spells that created barriers of pure magical energy, something the wraiths had never encountered before. The battle became chaos. Ships maneuvered in tight patterns, covering each other's weak points. Dragons breathed fire that burned even in the vacuum of space, their flames fueled by magic rather than oxygen. Wraiths shrieked in frequencies that hurt the mind, but the defenders held their ground. Lisa coordinated the defense from the command center, moving ships like pieces on a chessboard. She used human tactics of distraction and misdirection, drawing wraiths into kill zones where concentrated fire could overwhelm them. Eastern flank is weakening, Kate reported. The wraiths are adapting faster than we expected. Send the reserve wing. Tell Commander Vexnara to execute Pattern Delta. The Krevthar commander acknowledged and led a squadron of heavy cruisers into the gap. But Lisa could see the truth in the data. The wraiths were learning. Every tactic the defenders used, the wraiths studied and countered. They were still superior hunters, and eventually they would find the weakness in the defense. Silvera's voice came through again, strained with effort. They are too strong. We are holding them back, but we cannot win this way. They will outlast us. Lisa knew she was right. Despite all their preparations, despite the unity of multiple species, the wraiths were simply better at this than they were. Evolution had spent millions of years perfecting these creatures as the ultimate predators of predators. Then Silvara said something that made Lisa's blood run cold. There is another way. The Starfire Convergence. It is a ritual my people created as a last resort against the wraiths. It channels the life force of willing participants into a single devastating attack. But it requires an anchor, someone to guide and focus the energy. What happens to the anchor? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. They burn. Their essence is consumed to power the convergence. It is a sacrifice, Commander. One life given so that many may survive. No, Lisa said immediately. There has to be another way. There is not. I have lived with this knowledge for 200 years. I have carried this burden alone, waiting for the moment when it would be needed. That moment is now. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the battle intensifying. Ships were taking damage. Dragons were tiring. The wraiths pressed harder, sensing victory. Silvara, please. We can still find another solution. There is no time. The wraiths are about to break through our lines. When they do, they will reach the nexus and slaughter millions. I cannot allow that to happen. Lisa heard something in Silvara's voice, a finality that spoke of a decision already made. She wanted to argue, to find some way to stop this, but she knew Silvara was right. This was the only way. What do you need from me? Keep the wraiths occupied for 5 more minutes. That is all the time I need to gather the energy and complete the ritual. And Commander, thank you. Thank you for asking the right question. Thank you for bringing hope back to a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to stand together. The communication channel went silent. On the displays, Lisa watched as something extraordinary began to happen. All 300 elven riders and their dragons began to glow with pale light. The light flowed from them toward Silvara and Ember, streams of energy that grew brighter with each passing second. All forces, Lisa said, her voice breaking slightly. We need to buy them time. Whatever it takes, hold the line for 5 more minutes. The defenders understood without needing explanation. Ships that were damaged threw themselves into the path of wraith attacks to protect others. Krevthar warriors who had always fought for personal glory now sacrificed themselves to save their squadmates. The change was remarkable. These were no longer separate species fighting separate battles. This was a unified force fighting for survival. In the center of the formation, Silvara and Ember began to change. Their forms became indistinct, merging together as the life force of hundreds of elves and dragons poured into them. The light grew so bright that it hurt to look at directly. Lisa heard Silvara's voice one last time, but it was different now. Deeper. Resonant with power that transcended individual consciousness. Thank you, my friend. Tell the galaxy that we did not die in fear. Tell them we chose this. Tell them that prey can hunt back when it refuses to hunt alone. Then Silvara and Ember became pure starfire. The light exploded outward in a wave that washed over the entire battlefield. It did not harm the defenders, passing through their ships like warm sunlight. But when it touched the wraiths, they began to scream. Lisa understood what was happening. The starfire convergence was not just an attack. It was a message, a psychic resonance that carried the defiant will of every species the wraiths had ever hunted. All those voices, all that rage and determination and refusal to be victims, focused into a single overwhelming transmission. The wraiths, evolved to feed on predator pride, could not process this. Their hunting patterns fell apart. They tried to phase away, to escape, but the light followed them. It burned into their consciousness, showing them something they had never experienced before. Fear. All ships, fire at will, Kate ordered. Hit them while they are disoriented. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Without their phase-shifting abilities fully functional, the wraiths became vulnerable. Plasma bolts and missiles and dragonfire and magical energy tore through their ranks. They tried to fight back, but their coordination was broken. Their confidence shattered. The remaining wraiths began to retreat, fleeing back toward the edge of the system. The defenders did not pursue. They had won, but the cost had been terrible. Lisa watched as the light that had been Silvara and Ember faded slowly. It did not disappear completely. Instead, it coalesced into a new star, small but brilliantly bright, hanging in space where the convergence had taken place. The command center was silent. Around Lisa, hardened warriors and experienced officers wept openly. They had witnessed something sacred, a sacrifice so profound that it transcended species and culture. Dracnus entered the command center, his armor scorched and damaged from the battle. He walked to the viewport and stared at the new star for a long moment. She saved us all, he said quietly. An elf saved the Krevthar, the same species that destroyed her world. Why? Because she understood something we are only beginning to learn, Lisa replied. That survival is not about being the strongest or the most dominant. It is about being willing to stand together, even with those who have wronged you, because the alternative is extinction for everyone. Over the following weeks, the galaxy began to change. The wraiths did not return. Without their ability to sense predator pride effectively, they had retreated deep into unknown space, wounded and confused. They would return eventually, but not for many generations. The alliance that had formed to fight them did not dissolve. The species that had worked together discovered that cooperation brought benefits that conquest never could. Trade routes opened. Knowledge was